structures. So we're going to talk about this from two different perspectives because there are two different perspectives. There's the economy side, I can talk, based on like the model of people compete for our attention online. So what are they doing to get our attention? The idea of like the more attention you have, come on in. The more attention you have, the more powerful you become online. The same way, like more money you have, the more wealth you have, the more perceived power you have. We're going to start with a writing activity that's going to ask you to kind of reflect on that journal 9 that you just did, where you paid attention for an hour on how you were dividing your attention. And I think it's so interesting. When you ask somebody to pay attention to how they're paying attention, you're instantly like, oh my gosh, what am I paying attention to? Am I doing this right? Am I taking enough notes? Like, you automatically kind of get in your own way. And I know some of you mentioned that in your journals, that you were, you would be paying attention and you would get distracted and you would realize you hadn't written a note in 15 minutes. But that's all part of like that activity. So if you felt that way, that's fine. So many people mentioned like that sense of kind of heightened awareness made them maybe even feel anxious to like, what is it I'm actually paying attention to? Then we'll talk about attention and interaction and attention and literacy. We will go from there. I love attention structures, they're so fun. There's some updates this week for you though. So this week you're working on project 2, lesson 7, project 2, lesson 8. You'll turn in your project for lesson 8. You'll notice that at the bottom, I've kind of given you a window of when to turn in your project, and I've done this for a couple reasons. The first one is we're in week 8 of the longest semester ever, right, with no break. So I want to start trying this idea of having like a due date window instead of a due date, because I think that will help maybe with your stress and your workload, and I kind of am just curious to see how this fits. The other reason is I want to do more with the peer response. So lesson 7 is all about peer response, and we're going to talk about that in much more detail on Friday. But last week in lesson 6, you were supposed to work on your draft. And so now this week by Thursday, I want you to post that draft. Now that draft, when I say draft, that's exactly what I mean. It's a working draft. It does not have to be pretty, okay? It doesn't have to be completely done or even a screencast. It might be, like I just looked at Lauren's really nice outline. It might be an outline, it might be a script. It might be partly recorded, it might not be recorded at all. Whatever that is for you, just go ahead and post that on the discussion board in lesson 7. I'll show you what that looks like. And like I said, on Friday, we will talk a lot more about like the philosophy of my philosophy behind peer response and how to respond to it. Okay, so that's lesson 7. If you want to watch the video, you can, but we're also going to watch that video in class on Friday together. Okay, so that's where you want to post it, and then that's all you need to do before Friday. Does that sound good? I feel like a lot of people have actually turned this project in already, which is cool. But if you turned it in and now you want peer feedback, then go ahead and throw it in for your peer feedback, and you can always resubmit later if you want to. So the idea is that this week we post our drafts by Thursday. You'll post your response to somebody else's draft by Sunday, and then you have a whole week to turn in your project. So if somebody mentions something to you in peer response that you want to run with, then you feel like you have a week to work with that. Okay.
So it's not technically due till the 21st?
It's not technically due till the 21st, yeah. But I want people to think of it as a window instead of like an extension, if that makes sense. So you have the opportunity all next week, and I'm happy to look at your stuff. I'm happy to look at your outlines, your scripts, your first cuts of a screencast. I would love that. I would love to look at your stuff and give you feedback and help you with that. Questions about that? Does that sound good? I just realized I've been standing in front of the camera this whole time. I am the smartest person alive today. I can't even stand it. Okay. Let's take the first 5-ish minutes Journal 9 writing activity where you were paying attention for an hour on the things that you were paying attention to, I want you to think about how did you divide your attention. And right now, so I have technology listed here, but also like the physical space. So if you remember paying attention to your roommate or something going on outside the window you were sitting next to, I think that's important to talk about as well, because your attention gets divided among your physical space and your technology, right? And then the things within your technology. And then how do you respond to attention? What does it do for you when you get attention through messages or likes or shares or something like that? Okay, so tell me some of the things that came up in your journal 9 that were interesting to you about how you divide your attention. Yeah.
I talked a lot about Zoom and having the tools to mute yourself and shut your screen off.
Yes.
You know, I usually don't like having my screen on anyways, because like my roommate and I, like she has Zoom classes the same time that I do, so there's, you know, I don't want to make her uncomfortable or anything. But I still sit there and will check my phone or will like completely just quit paying attention just because it's kind of like the same stuff that we've been going over, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest things that I talked about.
Awesome. Yeah. I know a lot of people mentioned like the feeling of uncomfort or discomfort when they try to focus on one thing because we're so used to splitting our attention among several devices. And so when you're just trying to be on Zoom or you're just trying to watch a movie, it can be really uncomfortable. What else? What else came up in that journal for you and how you divide your attention?
I talked about how even, so like if I do an assignment and I like pause for a second, even if I don't pick up my phone to do something on my phone, I'm thinking about something that is on my phone. Like maybe I'm thinking about texting or Snapchatting someone, or like maybe wondering if they've responded to me, or like if I have any new direct messages, or just like anything like that. Like my phone could be flipped over on the other side of my desk, but still think about it. Like even if I'm just literally sitting there staring into space, like that's what I think about.
It's still in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
What do you say?
To piggyback on that, I intentionally have my phone on do not disturb at all times. Like I don't ever take it off. And I have it on there for a reason, obviously, because when I'm trying to get stuff done, like, and I don't need to be on my phone anyways. And it's helped me to be on it less, but because I don't have like the ringer on to know when I do get a notification, I'm like, I'll check it 1 second, really 5 seconds later, I'm like, oh no, it's still nothing. But even if I did have my ringer on, and I would still check it all the time too.
Yeah, I sort of have a similar response. Mine is always on Do Not Disturb too, but what I did is I got a basic Fitbit that only vibrates when you have texts or calls. So I feel like texts or calls are way more important than social media notifications, and if someone really needs to reach me, they're gonna call me. And so I feel like that really has really benefited me in the past few years, because it eliminates like that fear that I'm gonna miss an important call or something.
Yeah. I know a lot of things that I saw when I was reading the journals too, people mentioned feeling like almost guilty. Like that's not what you said in your journals, but there was, when I was reading it, I felt this kind of like almost apologetic tone, like, oh, I know I shouldn't be doing this, or I know I feel like I can't focus and read like one whole article at a time, and I feel like I should be able to do that, or I ought to be able to do that. Which I think is really interesting, because it goes back to that Nicholas Carr article, Is Google Making Us Smart, Is Google Making Us Stupid? And I think there's a conversation to have about the idea of attention and what we like ought to be doing. You know, what do you guys think?
Like I love my English classes and my major and everything, but I feel like once you get to a point in any semester and basically all of my English classes that I've had, it kind of gets like, it's a different reading, but it's about the same thing, so it kind of gets repetitive. So for me, like hard for me to focus and sit there and read another article that's like a different story and a different plot. Or even if it's something like, I usually end up liking it, but for me, that's just like, I'll read a little bit and then I'll stop. So it's hard for me to like get in a deep reading habit. And then if I don't understand it, like my professors encourage me, like after you read it, like go and look on the internet, so maybe it'll like start clicking with you. And obviously sometimes it's just easier to just like look it up on the internet, and so it's not clicking with you.
Yeah.
So I've like ran into that a couple times this semester.
Yeah, definitely. Does anybody else can relate? Yeah.
I can sort of relate, but I also have like a different aspect of this. So in high school, I studied like the lateral reading versus vertical reading
Oh,
trend.
interesting.
So basically what lateral reading is just go reading on a print book or page. But vertical reading is the scrolling reading that we do online. And that's actually changing how neurons fire in our brain.
Yeah.
So when people say like, oh, I should be able to read this article, I'm like, well, you should, but you're rewiring your brain. So it's almost like we're not talking about that aspect. So like,
Yes. That's kind of what I wanna get at.
yeah.
Is, I think there's a conversation to be had, not just in education, but in everywhere about this idea of like what we ought to be able to do. Because I know for me too, like, it takes practice for me to sit down and read an article, like an entire article. Like that's a certain kind of attention that I just don't have it at my fingertips all the time. All the time. When I'm working on a big project though, I'm more in the practice of like reading an article that way, but we just don't read that way. Like, and I don't know that, I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, I'm saying like that's a different thing because we have retrained our brains in different ways. So that's definitely something I saw coming up in your journal articles, and we can keep talking about this, but I just find it so interesting because I even feel that like I ought to be doing this a different way, or it's not wholly okay for me to jump back and forth the way I'm doing it. But that's kind of like the irony here is that, especially in the pandemic, but with digital technology, we have the affordance to do that. We can have multiple windows open, we can jump back and forth, we can check our phones, we can do all these things. The irony is that we have this like weight attached to it, and maybe we should be talking about that more. Other thoughts?
I feel like with what you ought to be able to do, like, I think for like a few years now, I've been so distracted like by my phone, like when I'm doing homework and things, but it's always turned out fine in the end. Like I've always gotten my work done. So then it's also like, okay, well, do I have to stop
Yeah.
constantly picking up my phone when I'm doing an assignment because like I'm getting the work done?
Right.
So it's like, it almost becomes like a comfort thing of like, well, I probably shouldn't pick up my phone because then I'll get this done faster and I'll be able to do something like downstairs later. But
So where do you think that idea comes from of like, I probably shouldn't look at my phone?
I mean, ever since like, I don't even know what the age is now that like on average that like kids get phones, but like in middle school ours were to be shut off in your locker, and then high school, my school was like super lenient on it, but I mean like still
Yeah.
that's just like the mentality like in our heads. And you even see people post things now like about like parents should try like no phones at the dinner table and all this and that, which there are definitely like hopeful things that could come from that, but there's a lot of like negatives that point towards like digital technology, and then like especially smartphones.
Yeah, and it's interesting because so I hear you saying that like it's coming from the top down in terms of generation, right? Like it's coming from an older generation and placing their values on technology on younger generations who have completely different values of technology. I'm not saying you guys should be texting through classes, so don't like pull out your phones in other classes and be like, well, Kat Green told me. But I do think it's something to consider because like when you go out into whatever profession, even if you're teaching, you're gonna have your phone on you nearby, probably, in case of emergency or something, right? You're gonna be checking your emails and going back and forth between lesson plans. You're always doing this like divided attention. And so I think, I don't know what the answer is, but I think we should be talking about that more. Like, where does this feeling of what we ought to do, and like, who's making that decision of what we ought to do? How is that affecting us in different places? Yeah.
Well, I think another reason outside of like the habitus, generational thing, is like there's so much research that is against excessive technology, like especially early childhood development. Like it's so detrimental to their development, and so I feel like we kind of carry that with us, like even though we're adults.
Yes.
Oh, what is that doing to my development if this is affecting kids this way?
Yeah. And especially that rule of like, I don't know if you guys know this, but the general rule for young kids is like no more than 2 hours of screen time a day. But what happens when they're e-learning? It does not take my kid 2 hours to do kindergarten online. It takes him like 6. So it's all, I mean, there's a lot of tension here between, especially the pandemic, I think emphasizes it, brings it out, brings it more to light. Okay, attention structures. There are two perspectives to look at attention structures, but when we say attention structures, we're talking about how we orient ourselves with patterns and how we divide our attention over space and time, okay? How we navigate that interaction. There's the attention economy model. We see the economy applied to digital technology a lot. This is just one way, but when we talk about user-generated content, we're gonna see the idea of the economy coming back. But the basic principle here is that, our economy works off of money and a competition-based model. So the best brand gets your money, right? The more money they get, the bigger the brand is, the more power or influence maybe they have. Same thing online. Brands do this, celebrities do this, influencers do this. Like, we all kind of participate in this, but we're gonna talk about specifically like the elements of that. And then this idea of polyfocality that we've just been talking about as well. How do we distribute our time across space and multitasking, and the ironies and the tensions that come out in that are really interesting. Okay, attention economy is deeply attached to social interaction, digital and online social interaction. And so that's why I've split these two things on our beautiful map that you probably see in your dreams. I've split these two elements of attention structure. So we've got attention economy down here directly attached to interaction, okay? People try to get our attention, brands, entities, whatever, try to get our attention through the interactions that are available or afforded to us online, okay? The most common way they do this is with kind of like a push-pull method. I give you something, you give me something. One of my favorite examples we're gonna take a look at is Jimmy Fallon. Have you guys heard of his like misheard lyric game? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so someone explain the misheard lyrics game to us that he does. Or I can explain it. Every Tuesday, hang on, I can't type and talk. Misheard lyrics. Every Tuesday, Jimmy Fallon tweets out a call for misheard lyrics. Misheard lyrics. Hang on, we'll watch it in just a second. And the idea is that people tweet back to him funny things they thought they have heard in songs that were not the correct lyrics, right? And they use the hashtag misheard lyrics. I think this is such a good example of that push-pull idea of attention in attention economy, because Jimmy Fallon is saying, hey, give me your stories, and if they're good enough, I'll put them on TV. So you give me the attention of your stories, and I'll give you the opportunity to be on my show, right? I'm never gonna be on Jimmy Fallon any other way than, this. He also has like, sometimes he'll do like, what's your embarrassing stories, or parenting stories or something like that. But misheard lyrics is probably the most popular one, and he always talks about the attention he gets at the beginning of the sketch. So pay attention to that.
Right now,
When we bring the car to your home, if you don't love it, you can return it.
then I will go with the convertible. Can you drop it off Tuesday?
Today is Tuesday.
Find dealers offering home services on AutoTrader.
Can you guys all hear that?
Tonight show hashtags. Here we go. Hey, very nice. Hey, you guys are on Twitter, right? Great. It's fun. Well, we use Twitter on our show every single week. So if you're watching the show, you want to play along, we do this thing. It's every Wednesday. I will send out a hashtag, usually in the middle of the day, and we ask you guys to tweet out things based on that topic. So since The Voice returned this week, I went on Twitter and I started a hashtag called Misheard Lyrics. And I asked you guys to tweet out a song lyric that you or someone you know has gotten wrong. We got thousands of tweets. In fact, within a half hour, it was a worldwide trending topic. So thank you for those.
I got all this attention. I got thousands of tweets. I was trending.
And we actually have an app. We actually have an app now, the Tonight Show app. You can get it on Android and on iPhone. And actually, it works. I'm very proud of it. It actually does work so much better than our late night app, which is like, I was a little, no, it was good, but this one actually works. And and it's free, so if you download it and you want to play the hashtag, you can just play it right from that app, and it leads right to Twitter through that thing if you want to. But if not, you can go around the other way. Hard work doesn't hurt no one.
Everybody worked very hard on that.
So now I thought I'd share some of my favorite misheard lyrics tweets from you guys. Here we go. First one is from @Iodes. He says, "I want to rock and roll all night and part of every day." Part of very specific. Between 11 and 3.
I will rock.
We'll rock and roll
All night, look out,
just a little bit.
because the lid is off the rock.
Yeah, very-
But during the day,
This one's from @Kimberly's21. She says, "When I was little, I thought the song was Bob, 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 or Ann. My parents' names are Bob and Ann." Like, I'm Italian, you're famous. Create a song. This one's from @NancyV.Rom. She says, "I used to sing, 'Who you gonna call? Those bastards.'" Famous movie.
yeah, famous movie.
I ain't afraid of no bastard. This one is from @OTG2014. She says, "I heard If You Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones as in Yugoslavia, you'll never stop. In Yugoslavia, in Yugoslavia, you'll never stop, never stop, never, never stop. Yugoslavia, you'll never stop, you never, you go. Yugoslavia, you'll never know. This one's from @Timbo Russell. He says, "When I was young, I thought the Lion King started with Pennsylvania." It should, actually. Why not? The Groundhog King. Pennsylvania. 6 more weeks of winter. Tommyville.
Okay, those are the best ones. I should go back and look what the actual lyrics to that Rolling Stones song are.
Yeah,
I don't know what those. I don't know what they are, so I feel like I'm missing the joke.
I know it's from 2014, but Jimmy Fallon looks tired.
Right? You've got a pandemic to go through yet. Perk up. No. Okay. So the idea of giving and getting attention is probably one of the biggest elements of the attention economy because it works just like us giving money in a store, except we're exchanging attention. The idea of perceptual attention, right? So when we get those emails that are like, "Hey Cat Green, you left something in your cart," or, like, "Dear Cat, we noticed you looking at this," or whatever. I don't know if that happens to you. It happens to me all the time. I feel like I'm getting basically like mail merges, right? There's an algorithm somewhere that has pulled my name and a message and put the two together and automatically sent it to me. There is nobody, at the North Face who is actually sending me an email, but it's meant to look that way. And intended to make their attention seem personalized to me, like they are reaching out to me, right? This is the signature of like that fifth wave of evolution we talked about way back when we were talking about legacy to digital. That's that fourth wave, that really perception, or that really individualized attention, or the perception of it. That's also where we get this idea of like fake intimacy, right? Especially in social media, you know, will people come up on our feed and we feel really attached to them, or their dogs, or what have you. Again, it's that personalized individual attention. This is not new. This idea of an attention economy is not new, right? And we distribute our attention among the, you know, actual physical space and places and people all the time. It's just that digital media, digital technology facilitates this for us in a more efficient way. So I could be having conversation with 3 of you at once here in this room, but it would be a lot easier if I could email 3 of you and have email conversations going on at the same time. This attention economy also has us rethinking values like privacy, right? And Lauren and I were just talking about this. You know, you try to turn off sharing information between apps so that you don't see the same ads. They're not like listening to you or picking up on things. So privacy isn't the only revalue that this attention economy is hoping or invites us to reconsider, but it's certainly one of them, okay? Also the idea of like when we get attention, like what do we do with that? How does that affect us internally? How do we internalize that? When we get a lot of likes, do we feel better about ourselves? You know, a lot of researchers have started questioning this idea of attention economy and people's self-esteem, people's worth, that kind of thing. What is actually happening? Is it good or is it bad? So think about your entity real fast. How do they compete for your attention? You don't have to answer this out loud, but like I want this to be something that you can consider. Especially if you're looking at their interactions, if they have a heavy interaction with the people that are participating with them on these digital platforms, then ask yourself, like, how are they competing for that attention? Or is it a give and take? Are they like asking questions every day and people are answering them? I've noticed this with like a lot of fitness people. They'll say like, you know, I'm trying this smoothie today. What smoothie are you making, right? And then people respond with the kind of smoothies. There's this like push-pull interaction in that way. Also, a certain perceived individual attention with that. What kind of smoothie are you, Denver? What are you making today, right? They sound like they're talking to me. So, something to consider for your project too. The other side of this, the flip side of the coin, is polyfocality. How users dispense their attention among multiple things at multiple times, okay? So, you have the physical space that you're in, right? You have the notebook in front of you, you have me talking to you, maybe you've got your phone next to you, maybe you've got your email open, like you are operating multiple spaces. Not just digitally, but physically. Within your digital space, you have spaces that you're operating as well. A good example of this is a video game. So, you're in Call of Duty, let's say, because I can't think of another video game. That is the platform that has your attention. But within that, you're a first-person operator of the game, right? So you've got your first-person point of view, but then all around you, there's like the attention structure of the game, or what you need to pay attention to in the game, right? How much energy you have, how many lives do you have, what's your mission, maybe instructions for you, maybe other players in the game who are like talking to you. So there's not only like the device that has your attention, but it's the platforms within the device and then what's operating in that platform. Does that make sense? Okay. Like I said, this isn't new, but digital media makes it way more efficient. Social interaction often happens with users in communities. So this polyfocality happens, like I said, in video games where communities are talking amongst each other. you're having multiple conversations at a time. You know, if you're into like the word games, what's that? I wanna say Scrabble, but it's not Scrabble.
With friends.
Words with friends. Maybe you have multiple games going on at one time, okay? You have some kind of community in there in which you're splitting your attention among people. And digital technology is facilitating this. Attention structures are different for everyone and often depend on the situation that you're in. So it's very situated and it's different for everyone. So your attention structure is very different than other folks' attention structure. We have a writer in A-Team who mentioned, like, she has a very strict schedule about her work life, I guess I would say. Her workflow is really interesting to me because she was like, I give myself a certain amount of time to check my phone and then I go right back to work. And I find that discipline to be like admirable because I don't have it. So that works for her. It doesn't work for me, I wish it did. But I have my own kind of like hierarchy attention structures and it differs from where I am every day. My attention is divided at home differently than it is divided at work. Okay. Oftentimes when these attention structures start to become out of sync, when we're spending too much time somewhere, then we start to see cognitive and behavioral issues, maybe like addiction, low self-esteem, body dysmorphia. Those kind of things can really be tied back to the idea of like misplaced attention or too much attention in a single space, right? When we get into the idea of like echo chambers, affinity spaces, when we seem to have our attention in a singular space, a singular sphere, things start to get a little out of balance. And like we talked about earlier, the awareness of polyfocality kind of puts like an extra emphasis on it. Lauren.
I was gonna say, when you were talking about like when the attention structures are out of sync, we were getting ready to leave on the boat last week, and I don't know what ended up happening, but I left my phone at like the house we were staying at. So we were already like halfway down the ocean, and I was like, literally like, where's my phone? I'm rummaging like through bags. I was like, can you guys like look for it? Can you call it? I was like, it's on Do Not Disturb, so you're not gonna hear it.
Right.
And my sister was like, finally after probably like 20 minutes, she's like, I can just check your location and see where it's at. And they're like, it'll probably be good for you. Like, just don't be on your phone and whatever. And then we stopped back there to grab food before we like left again. And I like ran in the house and I was like, Mom, where's my phone?
Yeah.
Was there that much on it? No.
Right.
But I was like,
But the
No.
anxiety that it caused because you were out of sync. Yeah. It's a good example of things to share. Dan?
I think this is an interesting example because my family also, I mean, you said ocean, but my family enjoys going to the lake, and when we go, all of the phones except one are in the house,
Yeah.
and we go on the boat and we don't look at the phone. But I think that's an example of voluntary and involuntary out of sync.
Right.
Yours
Like
is
she didn't
involuntary.
choose
Yeah,
to leave
exactly.
it, but yeah, you guys are.
So no anxiety plus or more anxiety.
Right.
It depends on the voluntariness of the sync.
Yeah.
there's times when I have self-control, but that was one of those times. I
That's
just
okay. There's
checked
times
my
when we
phone.
all have self-control and then there's times where we all don't. That's fine. Okay. Really interesting conversation today, friends. That's all I have for you at the moment. Are there any questions? Or concerns? Okay, so for Thursday, you wanna make sure you post your draft. Okay, whatever state your draft is in, that's what it is in, okay? Friday, we're gonna talk about, kind of like my philosophy on peer response, and we're gonna use a formula for you to respond that, worked really well in the fall, and I'm hoping it'll alleviate maybe some anxiety that is around peer review. I will see you Friday. Go sit in the sunshine. Okay,